Mishima Heihachi!
The son of Jinpachi and father of Kazuya, Heihachi would seize the Mishima Zaibatsu from his father. Dreading Heihachi's ambitions, Jinpachi planned a coup d'etat against his son, in order to stop Heihachi. His plan ultimately fails. Jinpachi is defeated and is left for dead under the temple of Honmaru. Wanting a worthy successor to the Mishima name, Heihachi would condition Kazuya to a harsh form of reality. If he can climb back up this cliff, he is truly Heihachi's son, and worthy of inheriting his business. 21 years passed after Heihachi's test, and the first King of Iron Fist tournament has begun. Heihachi adopts a silver-haired boy, Li Qiaolan, and invites him into the Mishima household to serve as a rival for Kazuya. He raises a bear cub and teaches it martial arts, and he kills Michelle's father. All events are a display of the man's raw power. Feeling unsatisfied, Heihachi announces the King of Iron Fist tournament, a challenge to fighters around the world to prove their strength, with the reward being a cash prize. The real motivation behind this tournament is so Heihachi can find worthy opponents to join his military. This is all because Heihachi is a man who believes that power is everything. It's an ideology he's passed down to his son, to disregard everything in order to chase power and rule with an iron fist. Iron Fist, of course, translates to Tekken. Many challenged Heihachi, but no one was his equal. No one except his son. The man whose life Heihachi defined comes back to defeat him. The scar on his chest represents the event that led Kazuya to this moment, a symbol of his hatred towards his father. Heihachi is defeated by his son, and thrown off of the same cliff he threw the boy. Kazuya smiles, savoring his revenge and this sweet irony. Kazuya is alone in the Mishima estate. From the top of the towering building, he gazes down at the city below. Kazuya is infatuated with the power he's obtained, and how he can use that power on his quest of world domination. Standing behind him is an angel. Wrapping her arms around him, she wishes to save the man from himself and from the dark powers surrounding him. In a distant wasteland, Heihachi climbs back up the cliff that Kazuya had thrown him off of through raw power. Kazuya had taken everything from Heihachi, his company, and the very symbol of his power. The roles between father and son are now reversed. Heihachi now seeks revenge on Kazuya, the story of revenge for a monster that Heihachi had created. Heihachi defeats Lee and gets his rematch with Kazuya. And Heihachi gets to see for himself the monster that he created. The symbol of his sins, lack of regard for humanity, and the quest for power. The devil has been the source of Kazuya's strength. He never climbed up the cliff himself. He's been relying on the power of this mysterious entity. Father versus son, man versus devil, absolute power versus borrowed power. Though Kazuya's actions are exactly what he was taught to do, both of these men believe that power is the only thing that matters, and they will stop at nothing to achieve that power. Where the two differ is their methodology. Heihachi is a man who believes that power is everything, but he gains that power by his own volition and disregards anyone who showcases weakness, regardless of familial ties. Kazuya adopts his father's beliefs. He wants power for power's sake, but he doesn't care about the method as to which he gains that power, or what it says about him as a person. Kazuya, at his core, is evil, and it only makes sense. He is his father's son. In this battle of natural versus ill-gotten power, Heihachi proves victorious and throws his son into a volcano, reclaiming the Mishima Zaibatsu. "15 years have passed since Heihachi took back the Zaibatsu. Heihachi has been making use of his military force to solve conflicts around the world, not out of an act of benevolence, but to gain the trust of the world's leaders. One day, Heihachi learns of a legend, a mysterious god of fighting known as Ogre, located in South America. The creature had been traveling around the world, killing its strongest fighters. This knowledge intrigues Heihachi, the sheer power that this creature holds, and how he can harness it for himself. His search ultimately ends in failure as his Tekken force is wiped out. Heihachi is encountered by a young man named Jin Kazama. Jin informs Heihachi that he is the son of Kazuya, and that his mother Jun was attacked by Ogre and vanished. Heihachi then surmises that the creature is attracted to powerful fighters. A tournament would be the perfect place to lure the creature out. Heihachi would spend 4 years training Jin in the Mishima Ryu style of karate. Heihachi is planning on using Jin's desire for revenge to capture Ogre. Ogre is defeated by Jin, but the creature's body evaporates, and Heihachi is unable to capture it. With Ogre defeated, Heihachi no longer has a need for Jin, and shoots him with no remorse, leaving it for his men to clean up. However, being Kazuya's son, Jin has inherited his blood, and transforms into a devil upon death and flies away. 2 years have passed. Luckily for Heihachi, his researchers managed to retrieve a sample of Ogre's blood following the events of the third tournament. Heihachi attempts to create a new life form by combining Ogre's blood with his own, the goal being to achieve ultimate power. Unfortunately for Heihachi, the experiment ends in failure. Heihachi learns that he lacks the devil gene required to combine Ogre's genome with his own. In order to fulfill his goal, Heihachi searches endlessly for Jin. In his search, he receives a photograph of a man whose body was badly burned. There was no doubt in Heihachi's mind that the body belonged to Kazuya. Upon further research, Heihachi learns that a cutting-edge biotech firm known as G-Corp is building Kazuya a new body. Heihachi sends his Tekken force into G-Corp's labs in order to steal Kazuya's body and to destroy their research data. Much to Heihachi's surprise, Kazuya is alive and well. The plan to retrieve Kazuya's body fails. If Heihachi were to obtain Ogre's power, he would need the devil gene from either Kazuya or Jin. Knowing that both of them want his head on a platter, Heihachi announces the King of Iron Fist Tournament 4. Despite being the most powerful man on the planet and having everything people desire, fame, money, and power, Heihachi still stops at nothing in his quest of absolute power, regardless of who gets hurt as a result. The goal of taking Ogre's power opens an interesting direction for Heihachi. He's searching for borrowed power, but achieves it by his own means. His sons saw great results by obtaining borrowed power after all, and now Heihachi emulates this method to gain greater power. Heihachi embodies several aspects of the 7 deadly sins, most notably pride, envy, and avarice, which fuel his ruthless ambition. His pride in his superiority leads him to abuse Kazuya, firing Lee from the Mishima Zaibatsu, as he refuses to share control over his empire. Envy drives him to suppress Kazuya's potential as a successor, while his greed propels him towards absolute power, making him unable to accept anyone as his equal. These vices push him to commit patricide against his father Jinpachi and attempt filicide against Kazuya, solidifying his dominance at the expense of his own family. Yet, much like how he showed Kazuya and Jin a harsh reality of the world, the very same would happen to Heihachi. Jin has him at his mercy and has every right to kill him, but Jin manages to compose himself and spares his family. Jin walks down a path that Heihachi could never understand, that power is not the same as strength. Lions will push their cubs over a cliff and only raise the ones that climb back up. If you are truly my son, you will survive this fall. These are the words that Heihachi spoke to Kazuya before throwing him off the cliff. Heihachi rips away Kazuya's locket. Within it, a picture of Kazuya with his mother. Heihachi tells him to be rid of it. Familial bonds mean nothing. The only thing that matters is power. The motion picture takes the ideas presented within the canon and expands on them. Heihachi isn't seeking power for world domination. Heihachi plans to rebuild the world in a more honest image. People do horrible things to one another, imagining a greater purpose. They mistake their own greed for truth. Within the context of this movie, Li Chaolan represents this idea. The only way to ensure the death of the devil and the renewal of the gods is to destroy this disgusting world and create one guided by power and power alone. The throw off the cliff was to plant seeds of hatred within Kazuya and to make him chase power. The desire to dominate with an iron fist. That is Heihachi's truth. Had Kazuya died, Heihachi would have ended his own life, but he believed in his son's ability. Heihachi in the games demonstrates traits of selfishness and envy. These traits are what drove him to overthrow Jinpachi and Kazuya and claim the Zaibatsu for himself. It's as if he was never truly seeking to have a successor to his throne. His actions contradict his words. In this film, Heihachi cares for Kazuya in a way, but his love is demented. He believes that his sins of attempted filicide are a necessary evil, a showcase of tough love to harden Kazuya to guide the world in a more honest image from its ashes. But isn't this Heihachi's very grievance against the world? How humanity commits horrible acts to one another? Is Heihachi not preaching his philosophy on life to Jun as if it is absolute? How can Heihachi hope to save the world, to eliminate evil when through his actions he's becoming the very thing he's sworn to fight against? He can't. Heihachi is completely unaware that he's been looped into the very cycle he was looking to end. And, in his arrogance, he nearly trapped Kazuya in this cycle as well. Kazuya had spent his whole life sacrificing his humanity. The only thing that kept him alive was the thought of killing his father. He stripped away any form of attachment he once held to his humanity, to his mother, or to Jun. Yet, all it took for Kazuya to see the futility in his path was Jun's tearful pleas. Kazuya can't hope for Heihachi to be struck down while he shoves poison down his own throat. What would ultimately spawn from Heihachi's plan is an endless cycle of hatred. With Jun's help, Kazuya walks away from the path that Heihachi created for him. Heihachi and Kazuya find themselves in a familiar place, alone with each other, for a death match. This time under the pretense that only one of them is going to walk away. This time, one of them is going to truly die. The memories flow through Heihachi's mind like a tidal wave, an overwhelming force of power with a burning sense of hatred. Heihachi, once again, finds himself locked in a death match with a monster that he created, a symbol of all the old man's mistakes. The devil, that once represented Kazuya's desire for power, is now strictly a symbol of Heihachi's sins against his son. But it hasn't always been this way. How did we get here? What was the cause for the feud?
全てはここから始まった。
Heihachi is confronted by a journalist, a man with nothing left to lose. He plans to expose the history of the Mishimas. Heihachi agrees to give him the information, if the world is told his story. Heihachi trained in his father Jinpachi's dojo at a young age, dedicating his life to martial arts. A young girl would enter the dojo one day, Kazumi Hachicho. The two quickly became rivals, and eventually fell in love. The world of fighting is a lonely one, the old man claims, a challenge on the mind, body, and soul. It didn't take long for Heihachi and Kazumi to become inseparable. Heihachi had found someone on his path. He had an unbreakable connection, and he planted seeds for the future in the form of their son, Kazuya. However, this peace would not last. Kazumi sits in solitude in the Mishima dojo, illuminated by candlelights. She fears that the time has come for her to stop Heihachi. She tells a mysterious shadowy figure about Heihachi's strength and his destructive capabilities, what he's capable of doing to Kazuya and to so many others. There's a hint of sadness and hesitancy in Kazumi's voice. She loves her husband and her son, the home that they've built, but she believes that this is the right thing to do. For a while, Kazumi had been acting strange. She had tried to kill Heihachi on several occasions. It was as if she had a split personality. One night, as Heihachi was training in the Mishima dojo, Kazumi enters. She announces that one day he will become a threat to the world, and thus she must kill him. Heihachi is confused by Kazumi's actions and words. Understandably so. This is so unlike her. She reveals to him that she only married into the Mishima family in order to end it. The Hachichos have existed for millennia, eradicating scum such as Heihachi. And then, it happens. Kazumi transforms. This demonic creature is Kazumi's true form. Heihachi never truly knew Kazumi. His thoughts and feelings are outlined through the flashbacks during the gameplay. Even after savagely beating Kazumi down, he expresses regret and begs her forgiveness. Heihachi prepares to leave, but Kazumi reawakens and attempts to strike him down, thinking he's dropped his guard, but she couldn't be more wrong. Attempting to defeat Heihachi with brute force proved to be ineffective. So Kazumi tries a different approach, and attempts to appeal to Heihachi's humanity. She preys on the love he has for her to make him vulnerable. Kazumi warns Heihachi that her death will cause an everlasting chain of hatred. Heihachi declares that she is no longer the Kazumi he loved, and kills her in self-defense. His heart of stone cracks, and he sheds a tear overlooking Kazumi's corpse. This is what started Heihachi down this path. There is still the question of why he abused Kazuya throughout his childhood, and why throw him down a cliff. He was an innocent child, was he not? Heihachi had suspected that Kazuya inherited Kazumi's blood. If the fall didn't kill him, he would be proven correct. Heihachi feared the devil so deeply that he gave birth to Lars to ensure that he didn't have the devil gene himself. All of his plans have failed. His remaining family hates him. Kazuya and Jin are devils living among men, and the love of his life is dead. Heihachi has nothing to live for. The only thing left for him to do now is to reveal the truth and be judged, or to die fighting Kazuya. When asked what this war even means to him, Heihachi only stares back in silence. No one knows for certain what the old man is thinking. The teachings that Heihachi had imparted to Kazuya and Jin a lifetime ago planted the seeds for his own demise, to disregard everyone in the search of power. For Heihachi's case, he pushes people away for the sake of his truth, that devils are evil and a plague amongst the world. Through the small pieces of dialogue that were given, we learned that Heihachi doesn't simply hate Kazuya or Jin. He hates what they ultimately represent. To Heihachi, the devils are everything that is wrong with the world. They represent corruption and absolute evil. He merely sees the hosts as vessels that the devils puppeteer. Heihachi is a man who doesn't speak until he feels the need to. He doesn't see the point in explaining his actions to others because they don't know what he knows. Had he only seen Jin for who he was as opposed to what he represented, he might have been able to salvage their relationship. If only he had been there for Lars or told Lee about Kazuya's true nature, he wouldn't have built bonds of hatred. Had he had only sat his son down and told him the truth, this battle to the death wouldn't have needed to happen. If only Heihachi had trusted anyone. He didn't even agree to let the narrator in his home without doing a background check on him. Kazumi's betrayal had turned Heihachi into an introvert with the inability to trust anyone. He believes that the devil is what turned Kazumi evil, that the woman in front of him was being worn as some sort of flesh suit, that the woman who had struck a deal with a demon to kill Heihachi was not the woman that he loved. However, this couldn't be further from the truth. It's Kazumi's will that fueled the devil within her. Kazumi had every right to be fearful of Heihachi's capabilities. After her death, he had spent decades causing pain and suffering to the world. But just because her vision was proven correct and that she had noble intentions doesn't make her better. After all, her fear of what her husband and son could do is what led to her death. Kazumi didn't trust in the love that Heihachi had for her to use the Zaibatsu for the good of mankind. She didn't trust her son to avoid falling into this chain of hatred. And she didn't trust in herself to convince them of any other path. Kazumi may have been born with the devil, but she still made a deal with a demon to carry out an act of vengeance. These two have more in common than they may have thought. Heihachi and his unwillingness to trust in the people around him, and Kazumi and her inability to trust in her family and their love. It's that very same love that brought Heihachi and Kazuya to this deathmatch. It's that love that has transformed into hatred that is tearing the world apart. If the Mishimas are going to be redeemed, and if the world is going to be saved, someone needs to rise above and put their faith into the people around them. But until that time, this is the fate of the Mishima family. Heihachi is defeated by a monster of his own making, and ends up living a lonely and miserable existence. He had an empty life and an even more meaningless death.
What do you mean he came back?
In this film, Heihachi cares for Kazuya in a way, but his muv. His fucking muv. But fuck. Fuck!